If week 1 was about regaining control, then week 2 is about changing how you think. I'm Tiffany Lesnik, domestic violence attorney, survivor, and legal coach. And this is step 2 of your 30-day legal reset. And we're talking today about strategic thinking. Most women don't lose in family court because they're wrong. They lose because they're reactive instead of strategic. Abusers thrive on chaos, but courts award clearness and clarity. Today we're talking about how to stop playing defense and start thinking like someone who understands the system. Give us a thumbs up and subscribe, hit the bell so that you don't miss any more content like this. So how is reactivity defined in the abuse world? Reactivity is the automatic, emotional, verbal, or behavioral response that occurs when a survivor's nervous system is triggered by control, threat, or manipulation, rather than by the present facts alone. It is not overreaction, it is a conditioned self-protection. However, it can look like overreaction, especially to a person like a judge. Reactivity is what happens when an abuser presses a button they trained, and your body responds before logic can. In abusive dynamics, reactivity is often immediate, emotionally charged, urgent, driven by fear of consequences, and focused on defending or explaining oneself. Why does reactivity develop in abuse? Reactivity is learned. It's not chosen. In abusive relationships, survivors are conditioned to believe that silence equals danger. If he's being quiet, he's giving you the silent treatment, he's not talking, what's about to happen next? There's about to be an explosion. Tensions are mounting. Delay equals punishment. We're just waiting for that next thing to happen. Disagreement equals escalation. Not responding equals loss of control or credibility. We have to explain ourselves. We have to respond. So the nervous system learns, respond fast or something bad will happen. And this conditioning does not disappear just because the relationship ends. It often intensifies during separation and litigation, when post-separation abuse many times escalates because the abuser has feared that he's lost control over you. So he amps up the abusive behavior in order to get a response from you. And so that response comes in the form of reactivity. That is the term that we give for it. So what does reactivity look like in the legal context? In family court and post-separation abuse, reactivity often shows up as responding immediately to hostile messages. I know so many women are so triggered just by the sound of their phone or just by their phone vibrating. Is it him? What is he saying? What is he threatening? What is happening? So immediately responding to his messages, even when they're not appropriate, even when they don't warrant a response. Over-explaining or justifying basic or reasonable or court-justified decisions. Correcting every lie instead of documenting his patterns. Emotional language in Our Family Wizard, or text or emails. Maybe calling him names like a deadbeat dad, accusing him of abuse or telling him he's a good for nothing, cussing him out, telling him the children hate him. Treating emergencies as equal, even when they're not. I get that as an attorney all the time. I'll put my out of office message up and I'll say, if you have an emergency or if there's an urgent issue, please put urgent in the subject line. I don't know how many of my clients who are involved in domestic violence cases will put urgent in the subject line, even when the matter is not urgent at all. Urgent is a situation where your safety is at risk, your children are at risk, someone's calling 911, a restraining order needs to be filed, someone is going to the hospital, someone is making a threat, CPS is involved. These are urgent issues. We're making decisions to calm the abuser instead of protecting your case, right? I said this in part 1 of the 30-day legal reset. If you haven't watched that, I'd urge you to go back and watch part 1. Are we making decisions? Are we responding because it's legally protecting our case and it's strategic? Are we doing it in order to alleviate our anxiety? Let me tell you a tip on that. Many times what we're actually doing is we're increasing our anxiety long term. So in that moment when we're responding to that message, it may temporarily alleviate our anxiety for a few minutes, maybe an hour or two, but it's going to escalate the conflict and it's going to increase communication and it's going to escalate that dynamic that he's going to pull you into, and it's going to increase your anxiety long term. Don't let yourself get pulled into that with the abuser. And what you also need to realize is that judges don't always see the trauma behind your reactive responses. Some do. Some judges are very trauma informed. So I'm not saying all judges are not going to understand how you respond. But there are some judges who will not see your reactivity as being a trauma-based response. They're only going to see the paper trail, and that's where the narcissist can come in and be cool, calm, and collective, charismatic in court, and be successful. So the goal is we want to be proactive. We do not want to be reactive. We need to be able to tell our story with confidence and clarity. And when I use the word clarity, because I use that word a lot, we're talking about we need to be clear. What do we mean? Who is the who, what, when, where, why of what happened? We need to be able to tell our story in a way that the judge understands it. Okay? So why do abusers rely on reactivity? Abusers do not need to control outcomes if they can control reactions, and especially your reaction. So reactivity creates messy communication, and if you both are communicating in the same manner, right, he's being abusive and chaotic and causing confusion, and you're responding in the same, the judge kind of looks at you both as if you're equal. And that's when you're more likely to end up with 50-50 parenting time, which I'm sure is not something that you want. And it also doesn't necessarily reflect the reality of your situation, but he's pulling you in and it's creating that paper trail that makes it look like the reality. So don't engage. It erodes your credibility. Even though you might be the safe, consistent, calm, protective parent when your children are with you, if he has you looking on paper like you are unstable, like you are overly emotional, like you are an anxious wreck, that's what the judge is going to see. So that's going to erode your credibility. We do not want to do that. It distracts from his pattern of behavior. So if he's consistently acting in a way that lacks judgment, insight, protectiveness for the children, if he's acting in ways that are consistently abusive, right, you reacting to that is going to distract the judge from his behavior. We want his behavior to outshine yours. And I mean that in the negative sense. Abusers control outcomes because it makes survivors look unstable instead of strategic, because it keeps survivors focused on the abuser and not on their case. You need to be focused on, when you're responding or engaged with the abuser, what is my motivation for responding or engaging with him at this moment? Am I focused on him, or am I focused on my legal outcome or the best interest of my children? And if you are focused on him and pacifying him in some way, then you don't need to respond. His provocation is not accidental. It is tactical. So what is the difference between reactivity and strategy? And I'm going to put that up on the screen for you. So reactivity acts in an urgent manner. I've got to pacify him right now. I have to respond right now. I have to call him back right now. I have to give in to his demands right now when he demands for me to call him or meet him in person. Strategy is intentional. Thinking very clearly through your next steps before you respond. Slowing down. Not responding, okay? Especially when things are irrelevant or they're abusive or they're not child-centered. It looks emotional, where strategy is pattern-based. Reactivity explains, you're over-explaining, whereas strategy is documenting his behavior, documenting events, documenting forfeited time, documenting withholding, documenting interference with medical, therapeutic care, or the children's education. Reactivity defends, defending yourself. You don't need to do that. If you are a good parent, you don't need to defend your good parenting. Instead, strategy prepares for court. Focuses on being understood, where strategy focuses on being effective, especially in front of your audience, who is the judge, or a mediator, or an arbitrator, or a parenting coordinator, a guardian ad litem, whoever the legal person who has any influence over your case may be. And reactivity is nervous system driven, whereas strategy is goal driven. I always tell my clients, take a whiteboard or chalkboard, or just a piece of paper and write out what are your top 5 goals for your case. And then stay focused on those goals. What are they? And keep coming back to them. Keep looking at them and stay focused on those goals. And don't let him take you down a rabbit hole, an emotional rabbit hole that gets you distracted from those goals. Reactivity kept you safe in your relationship, but strategy is what's going to keep you safe in court. Galatians 5:22 through 23 says, "But the fruit of the Spirit is love, joy, peace, patience, kindness, goodness, faithfulness, gentleness, and self-control." We want to use these biblical principles in how we respond and in how we behave. I've used these principles in my own legal case when I was going through it as a survivor, and I use these legal principles as an attorney when treating other attorneys, judges, and my clients with the respect that they deserve, right? I walk into a courtroom with a Christ-like attitude. We are indwelt by the Holy Spirit. He gives us the power to act with these things. It flows from an alignment, from our relationship with the Holy Spirit, and it flows from truth and wisdom. It will help empower you to be successful in your cases. And love, joy, peace, patience, kindness, goodness, gentleness, faithfulness, self-control is not passivity. It is strength under authority. I am not telling you to love him more, to be more patient with him, to be kinder to him. I'm not telling you to submit to his abuse by saying this. What I am saying is that when you respond to those messages, when you receive that abusive message, you don't have to love him more by responding more. You don't have to love him more by bowing down to his every demand or need, right? That's not love. We need to be setting boundaries. We need to be responding in a way that is polite, even at times when he is not so polite. What does reactive thinking sound like or look like? It definitely looks like I have to respond right now. If I don't explain everything, like if I don't respond to every single thing, the judge is going to believe him. This is so unfair. I need to correct the record, even when he said something that's absolutely ridiculous. Strategic thinking asks different questions. Does this response help or hurt my case long term? Does this response help or hurt the custody outcome of my case? Does this response help or hurt the financial outcome of my case and my ability to receive support? Is this issue legally relevant or just emotionally triggering? Is he pushing my buttons because he knows how to? What outcome am I really trying to achieve by responding? Courts don't reward the most emotional parent. They reward the most organized, consistent, and credible one. Abusers want you focused on individual moments. Judges look for patterns of behavior. Strategic thinking means you stop reacting to every provocation, you start documenting patterns, and you ask yourself, is this an isolated annoyance or part of a larger pattern? Now, I'm not saying there might be an isolated incident that isn't extremely important. There might be very, very big events that are isolated incidents that you absolutely need to document. But if there is an isolated incident that in the scheme of things doesn't seem like such a big deal, that might not be an incident that we need to be so focused on, right? We need to think big picture, like a funnel. We need to funnel down all of the information and focus on that information which is the most important to our case. If you only had 10 minutes to communicate everything you wanted to a judge, what would that be? And again, be focused on your 5 goals. Be centered around what are those 5 goals. And then, does the information that you want to convey, does that information belong in an email, in a text message, or potentially in an affidavit? Tip for you, strategic tip. If it wouldn't matter to a judge 3 months from now, it probably doesn't deserve your energy today. Another tip for you, court is not a therapy room. This is not a place for us to be reactive either. One of the hardest mindset shifts for survivors is that court is not where truth is felt. Court is where truth is proven. Strategic thinkers don't over-explain, they don't vent to opposing counsel, they don't argue facts that can't be proven, and instead they ask, what evidence supports this? What rule or order applies, and how does this impact my children and the custody outcome? Survivors in particular have a really hard time being able to tell their story. They come into my office and they just want to tell me everything all at one time. And what needs to take maybe 10, 15 minutes will take an hour. You don't have the luxury of that in court. You need to be able to learn to tell your story with clarity and confidence swiftly. And I'm going to say this, and I want you to hear this very clearly. You can absolutely tell 100% of the truth without telling 100% of the story. And I'm going to say that again. You can absolutely tell 100% of the truth without telling 100% of the story. What that means is you don't have to give all the details of an hour-long story. You can summarize it in a condensed manner and have that summary still be absolutely true. Victims get really hung up on, I have to tell 100% the truth of everything. In the legal context, that really can hurt you. I want you to start thinking in patterns of behavior, not in just incidents, and that's part of strategic thinking. What are some of the patterns of behavior that your abuser engages in? Does he interfere in the children's medical health? Does he interfere with the children receiving therapy? Is he refusing to pay you support? Is he constantly paying you support late? Is he defaulting on the mortgage payment? Is he not keeping the home in a clean and reasonable state so that it can be sold? What is he consistently doing? Is he hiding or secreting away assets? We want to be documenting patterns of behavior. Strategic thinking means you stop reacting to every provocation, you start documenting patterns, and you ask yourself, is this an isolated annoyance or part of a larger pattern? So, common mistakes that hurt your case. Let me name a few patterns I see every week. responding emotionally in writing, correcting every lie instead of documenting them, treating the abuser like a reasonable co-parent, believing fairness matters more than procedure. So for this week, your strategic reset. This week's reset exercise is 1, before responding to anything, pause for 24 hours unless it's truly an emergency. 911's being called, someone's going to the hospital, someone's going to jail, someone is severely injured, there's a medical emergency. Number 2, ask, is this legally relevant? And number 3, decide, before you respond, should you document or should you ignore? Create a simple rule, no response unless it serves my legal strategy. I hope you will join me February 3rd as I will have a webcast on creating your legal support team. And that is so important because it helps you with becoming less reactive and becoming more grounded. So important to have people surrounding you to help you feel more confident and less emotional, because I understand how traumatic the legal process can be for women coming out of abuse. And so a lot of these tips and helping you keep grounded and helping you build your support team is exactly what we do inside Live Free Legal coaching groups. These are live, real-life coaching sessions, not virtual videos you watch alone. Inside these groups, there are 12-week sessions. I teach you how to think strategically instead of emotionally, build a court-ready case, and communicate without self-sabotage, and protect your children and your credibility. Groups are opening again soon. They start February 3rd. Registration opens January 15th and closes January 31st. Spots are extremely limited so that this coaching stays personal. We do a Q&A after each group, so you have a chance to ask me personal questions. Join the waitlist now at livefreelegal.com. The link is in the description below. You'll have a chance for early registration 24 hours before registration opens on January 15th if you get on the waitlist now. If you want ongoing support, devotionals, and faith-based legal encouragement, you can also join the Empower Her private membership for just $35 a year. I hope you will join us next week, Tuesday at 7 p.m. Eastern Standard Time for our next webcast as we continue in our 30-day legal reset. Remember to like us, give us a thumbs up, click on the notification bell so you don't miss any more videos, and share this video with another woman who needs to hear it. Let's free as many women from fear and bondage and the oppression of abuse as we possibly can, and let's make 2026 a year of freedom.